To further weigh in, let's welcome Harvard Law visiting fellow, criminal defense attorney, and former prosecutor, Vinoo Varghese. Vinoo, what did you make of the arguments today in front of the Supreme Court? I know that a lot of conservatives want them to rule on these district court judges once and for all. Given the fact that Trump has been blocked so many times by district court judges from implementing his agenda nationally, and there's a lot of disagreement whether they have that power or not. But do you think the Supreme Court is going to use this 14th Amendment executive order to bring about clarity on that issue?
Look, I think that conservatives need to be careful what they're asking for. President Biden was rejected 14 times. There were 14 injunctions issued against him, all by people appointed by a Democratic president. These injunctions were halting vaccine mandates, immigration policy, climate change cost estimates, stimulus programs for farmers of color. You know, the reality is that even if the Supreme Court were to agree with Donald Trump and limit the use of this power now, think about what that would mean for a future Democratic president, which, you know, just in Biden's term, Biden was stopped over a dozen times by conservative judges. So I think it's, you know, a case of be careful what you ask for. I don't know, based on today's argument, which way they're leaning. There's talk that it may be from so-called Supreme Court predictors. It's kind of like a betting pool, that it'll be a 6-3 decision with Alito and Thomas in the minority, perhaps with Gorsuch. But 6 of them are going to rule that judges can issue or will still be able to issue these kind of injunctions.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't hear them argue a lot of about the merits today. But among the issues they did talk about is if you had a litigant who carried a case and won the case, and it was not universal, it didn't apply to other people with similar characteristics, however you define those, then all you would do is just have a remedy for that litigant, and you'd need thousands of people to each sue, and they're not going to be able to afford that, to accomplish the same thing. At the same time, you could have a universal application of something that maybe hasn't gotten to the Supreme Court yet, and it shouldn't have that power. What's your take on that?
Look, that's the argument put forth by the Trump administration and Solicitor General. And it seemed like they caught the ear of Justice Kavanaugh, because he actually said that why can't you just make it a class and have a class joined and then get your injunction that way or get your relief that way. So again, but the issue here, and again, what you're talking about, great point about the merits, is that this was a modest request. Those are the exact words of the Solicitor General, saying that they just want to limit the power of judges. So it's important to note that that Donald Trump, in his first term, issued 220 executive orders. Biden issued 162. That's in 4 years. Donald Trump issued 220. In 4 months so far, Donald Trump has put forth 152. So he is on a staggering pace, and that means potentially 608 this year, which would totally decimate any presidential record for this. It was Roosevelt that issued the most, FDR, because he had 4 terms. But you know, he's on a unprecedented executive order spending spree, if you want to call it that. But look, I think that it seems that they're not going to stop the district court judges. But even if they were, think about the next president who may be a Democrat. I mean, you want to be able to have some check on a president's powers.
So what happens to the debate or the question about birthright citizenship? Because that's what the executive order originally was about, was eliminating birthright citizenship. Where does that go? Because it doesn't sound like the Supreme Court is going to weigh in that debate whatsoever.
Correct, because they have to let the litigation proceed. The Supreme Court, you know, sometimes they'll weigh in and come in. And so, look, the Trump administration has a remedy, which is to appeal a district court judge and then take an emergency order to Supreme Court. But as far as birthright citizenship goes, the interesting argument that the Trump administration is making is that the case which set up birthright citizenship, which is an 1898 case called Wong Kim Ark, which a Chinese-born American was denied citizenship originally, but then was able to get it through that decision. They're just saying that, hey, you know what? In Wong's case, his parents were actually permanent residents here. And so that's what you should do it. And I think that if they were able to get this done, they can get it done through a constitutional amendment. It actually would probably, if they were able to do it that way, would stem tremendously the tide of illegal immigration in this country. So the goals aren't bad, right? It's just perhaps the way they're going about it is something that could come back and bite future Republican presidents and other and conservatives who want to get certain things done.
Fair enough. Vinoo Varghese, thank you so much for being with us, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.